Welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is to crack a paradox, really, that seems to be dominating global events.
It is a strange one.
I mean, you look at the headlines, and the world just feels intensely volatile. You've got major tensions in the Middle East, the Red Sea, the Black Sea situation.
Right.
Yet, when you actually check the markets, the prices for oil and LNG, natural gas, they're remarkably stable.
It's the strange calm, isn't it? Our traditional operating system, it tells us that these kinds of geopolitical shocks should immediately translate into these massive price spikes.
Like in the 70s or even the 2000s.
Exactly. But it just hasn't happened.
It feels like a bug in the system, a complete misalignment between geopolitical fear and what we're seeing in the economic reality. It's like the world is holding its breath, but the price charts aren't showing any of the panic.
And from the MGF perspective, the macro geopolitical field analysis, this quietness is actually the main event. The crisis hasn't disappeared. It has simply transferred its energy to a different layer, a less visible one.
So we aren't seeing a stability. We're seeing a conversion of risk.
That's it.
So our mission today is to trace that transfer. We're following the pressure as it moves from, visible price shocks into something that builds up quietly.
Starting with energy and then moving into security, finance, politics, and then finally right into daily life.
We're tracing a hidden structural movement.
That's the key. We have to look beyond the spot price and see where the system is working overtime to absorb all this stress. Because stability in one place means intense pressure is building up somewhere else.
Okay, so let's start where it all begins. Energy. For the longest time, the global assumption was just war equals energy crisis. Full stop.
That's the past OS, the old operating system. And it's clearly obsolete.
The energy market seems to have grown these new shock absorbers.
It really has. The whole function of the energy sector has fundamentally changed. It's gone from a system that historically created crises to one that now structurally hides them.
It absorbs the shock.
It absorbs them. It acts as this shared baseline between the linear, predictable market world and the nonlinear, chaotic world of conflict.
That's a huge claim. How is it actually doing that? What are the specific buffers that let prices stay calm when you have major conflict zones disrupting shipping?
Well, we see three primary mechanisms, and they're all working together. First, and this is probably the most significant, is the sheer supply cushioning from U.S. shale.
The unconventional sources.
Right. Unlike OPEC, which is governed by political decisions, quotas, U.S. production is fast, it's responsive, it's market-driven. It puts an effective ceiling on any extreme price spikes.
Because if the price gets too high, that supply can just flood the market pretty quickly.
It can, and that continuously buffers the threat. Then second, you have the maturation of the LNG spot market.
The global gas market?
Yes. 10, 15 years ago, gas was rigid. It was locked into these long-term pipeline contracts. Now, with LNG capacity everywhere, gas is incredibly flexible.
So if Russian pipeline gas isn't available in Europe?
A tanker from Qatar or the U.S. can just reroute. It makes the whole system much more resilient to localized shocks.
Okay, so that's the physical and logistical buffer. But what about the financial one? Because fear alone used to send prices soaring.
And that brings us to the third point, the incredibly advanced financial hedging mechanisms. The futures, the options, all the derivatives.
This is where the risk is managed.
This is where the risk isn't eliminated. It's converted into a financial product. Sophisticated institutions internalize that volatility. They hedge against it. The panic doesn't hit the open market in the same way.
Okay, let's unpack this for the listener. The risk isn't going away. It's just being paid for and warehoused by these huge financial instruments.
That's the core insight.
So the old assumption that stable prices mean less risk, that's completely dead. Stable prices are just proof that the shock has been contained, at least for now, in those financial and logistical layers.
The system is currently overfunctioning as a geopolitical event absorption OS. It's so efficient that it's creating this massive cognitive dissonance.
The world feels terrifying, but my fuel bill hasn't bankrupted me.
Exactly. And that dissonance is the sign that this system is straining. It's preparing the ground for a break somewhere else entirely.
But wait, historically, big price spikes forced change, right? They forced political and behavioral shifts fast. Is this a permanent change, or is this just a temporary suppression that's going to fail later?
It's a structural change in where the risk shows up. Energy prices were the thermometer for the old world. Now they just tell us that the initial heat of the crisis has been moved down the chain.
So we have to look at the next layer.
We have to look at security. If energy absorbs the price shock, where does the actual security risk the threat to trade and movement go? It can't just vanish.
Right. So where does it go?
It shifts layers.
Yeah.
It moves from a military conflict risk to a risk for our civilian operating systems.
Meaning what? Exactly.
The front line is no longer just militaries on a border. The front line is now the maritime infrastructure, it's the insurance market, it's the logistics chains. When Red Sea tensions spike, we see it as a crisis of commercial infrastructure management, not an oil price crisis.
So the key risk isn't the Suez Canal shutting down completely, which would be this huge, obvious event.
Right.
It's about maintaining continuous operation while that risk profile is just spiking. It's the cost of keeping things running under duress.
Precisely. The rights don't stop, but they narrow, or they get longer going around the Cape of Good Hope. The constant pressure falls on the commercial side. And the key indicator here isn't military positioning.
It's insurance conditions.
It's the insurance conditions. They change long before any military engagement.
How does that work as a transfer mechanism?
Well, when a shipping lane becomes a high-risk zone, say, from drone attacks, the cost of war risk insurance for every single ship skyrockets. It's not a general price increase. It's a very targeted, structural increase in the cost of doing business there.
So security is maintained by private contracts and adjusted prices, not just by Navy.
And more, yes. The cost of that risk gets internalized by the logistics chain, not by the commodity price you see on the news.
Which means security has fundamentally become a commercial infrastructure management problem. The pressure is the threat of the system failing while it's still running. A shipping company just decides the insurance is too high, they reroute, and suddenly you've got weeks and huge fuel costs added to every shipment.
And that friction is the perfect hinge point. It's the transition into the financial sector, because insurance is the mechanism moving that stress from the ships right onto the balance sheets of insurers.
Okay, so in finance, we're used to looking for pressure in market crashes, falling indexes, spiking interest rates, but you're suggesting the pressure is avoiding all of those visible metrics.
It is. It's accumulating in the conditions and the design of financial products instead.
And where specifically is this invisible risk collecting?
We see three big pressure points. The first, and maybe the most important, is reinsurance.
Insurance for the insurers.
That's right. It's the global mechanism that handles these massive correlated risks, geopolitical tension, mixed with, say, climate disaster risk. It's the last buffer for the whole system.
So when a war risk claim from the Red Sea hits an insurer, they pass that risk on to a global reinsurer.
Correct. But the cost of that service, because of all this global volatility, it doesn't show up as a market drop. It shows up as hardened underwriting conditions.
Meaning?
Reinsurers make the terms stricter. They demand massive deductibles, they add more exclusions, they shrink the available capacity for certain risks. The literal contracts that underpin global trade are hardening, slowly but irreversibly.
So the crisis shows up when a business suddenly can't get affordable coverage for a key risk, even if oil is at $80 a barrel.
That's it. It's a tightening of the ecosystem, not a visible collapse. And the second pressure point is related. Credit and trust.
Okay.
The anxiety doesn't appear as a stock market crash. It appears during these very specific moments, rollover and renewal.
The moment a company has to renew its debt or its credit lines.
Precisely. That's where you see selective credit contraction. A bank might be fine lending to 90% of its clients, but suddenly it pulls back from that last 10%.
The ones exposed to these geopolitical or supply chain risks.
Exactly. A single company's ability to renew a loan becomes a potential flashpoint.
Yeah.
Not because of a big macro event, but because trust in its ability to navigate these new, quiet pressures has hardened.
And the third point is foreign exchange. This one feels a bit counterintuitive. If the price of energy is stable, why is currency instability getting worse in some places?
Because FX, currency, doesn't react to the stable price itself. It reacts to the underlying energy payment structure.
The contracts, the need for dollars.
The need for dollars.
Yeah.
A country needs dollars to pay for energy, whether a barrel costs $70 or $90. If that country's ability to get dollars is eroding, maybe because of sanctions or political pressure, its currency destabilizes.
So price stability plus FX instability equals deep internal stress.
Yes. The energy sector is paying a stable dollar price, but the non-dollar world is paying an astronomical price in domestic currency volatility.
And if things break, it won't be a big crash on the Dow Jones. It'll be contracts hardening and a few key companies defaulting.
That's how this quiet pressure works in finance.
Which leads us directly to the layers that affect people every single day: politics and daily life. So if energy prices are calm and inflation is, somewhat managed, Why does everyone, everywhere, feel like they are under such relentless pressure?
This is the political structural failure. Because the crises aren't these visible, massive price spikes, politicians aren't forced into immediate, painful action.
They can avoid it.
They can. And this leads them right into the subsidy trap.
Where temporary relief like fuel price caps just becomes permanent, a way to dampen social dissatisfaction?
They're politically irresistible. In the short term, they work. They stabilize the electorate, but the structural cost is immense. The political system loses its fundamental power to explain.
What do you mean by that?
Leaders lose the ability to articulate why tough budget cuts or tax hikes are needed when the headline energy prices look fine. The public perception becomes, if energy's okay, why are we broke?
So the system isn't breaking because of immediate bankruptcy, it's breaking because the narrative breaks. The subsidy drains the budget, but more importantly, it drains the government's legitimacy.
The fiscal strain is a downstream result of that loss of trust. If a government is always dampening price signals, eventually the public just stops believing any of its claims about the future. The whole political structure gets hollowed out.
Which brings us to the most immediate layer, daily life. The CPI index might be stable, but that feeling of high cost just persists. If gas prices are managed, why do groceries and services still feel ruinously expensive?
Because our perception of price at the individual level is cumulative and irreversible. It's not based on averages. It's based on items defined by frequency x necessity.
The food you buy every week, transit costs, rent.
The things you're exposed to constantly. Even small, sustained rises in those things build this undeniable feeling of being stretched. The stability in energy just doesn't compensate for the creep in everything else.
And that leads to a different kind of public reaction.
It does. Because there's no clear bad actor to blame, like a single price spike. The dissatisfaction doesn't really become anger or protest. People don't riot over the price of lettuce.
So how does it manifest instead?
It manifests as apathy and withdrawal. People make these quiet behavioral changes that are hard to measure in real time.
The shrinkage of expenditure and future plans.
That's a huge part of it. It's the collective decision to postpone dental work, cancel a subscription, stop saving for a down payment because the goalposts just keep moving.
It's a society slowly lowering its expectations.
It is. It's a general lowering of the social temperature. People don't protest the system. They just opt out of expecting a better future. And this quiet change in behavior, this is often the deepest and slowest layer of societal transformation.
So what does this all mean? Let's try to synthesize this. The core crisis, the global volatility, it wasn't eliminated. It was just converted into a form that's almost impossible to talk about publicly. An unspeakable form, as the source puts it.
The chain is complete. Energy absorbed the initial pressure. That stressed the conditions of security and finance, making contracts harder and credit scarcer. That, in turn, eroded the legitimacy of politics, and finally showed up as lowered expectations and quiet withdrawal in daily life.
So the danger isn't the visible chaos. It's the pressure building in these really specific technical details, the deductibles on a reinsurance contract, a loan rollover date, and people's willingness to plan for anything beyond tomorrow.
The essential MGF observation is that in this quiet world, you have to look very closely at where the distortions are accumulating. The system is functional, but the price of that functionality is this irreversible cooling of confidence.
The next rupture might not be an explosion of prices. It might be a deep, irreversible cooling of the entire system.
It raises a powerful question for all of us. These quiet systems hide deep stress.
Where do you think this quiet pressure will surface next? Will the breaking point be a massive failure in financial contracts that can no longer find insurance capacity? Or will it be the moment society realizes it can no longer tolerate a life characterized by this permanent, silent withdrawal?